The UNS Resolute Dawn was no mere ship. It was humanity's declaration, its challenge to a galaxy that had long underestimated them. As it emerged from the shadows of Neptune, its massive silhouette filled the viewscreens of the Galactic Council, casting a long shadow of uncertainty across the stars. For a moment, all was silent. The only sound was the low hum of the council chambers, where representatives from dozens of races sat, frozen in shock. Captain Alina Vos stood at the helm, her dark eyes scanning the cosmic horizon. The deck was alive with activity as officers and crew members worked with practiced precision, adjusting course vectors and analyzing incoming data. Her crew was young, many of them veterans of the war, but still carrying the weight of their past experiences. She knew their hearts beat with the same intensity as hers, unwavering, determined. "Captain, we have confirmed the Zorath fleet's position," said Commander Thomas Volkov, his voice low but steady as he looked at the tactical display. "They've made their move on the Sirith cluster. Thousands of civilians are in their path." "Understood," Vos replied, her voice calm, betraying none of the anger that burned inside her. She had seen too much of the devastation the Zorath wreaked upon the defenseless. Too many worlds had fallen, their populations erased like footnotes in the history of the universe. "This is it," she whispered to herself, though her words were meant for the crew as much as they were for the galaxy at large. "We don't wait for others to act. We act." With a decisive motion, Captain Vos gave the order. "All hands, prepare for engagement." The Resolute Dawn accelerated, its massive engines flaring to life as it cut through the darkness of space, heading straight into the heart of Zorath-controlled territory. The ship's sheer size and firepower were enough to intimidate even the fiercest enemies, but humanity's true weapon lay in its resolve. The crew knew what was at stake. This wasn't just about defending Earth or any one planet. It was about sending a message to the universe. Humanity would not be cowed by tyranny. They would stand and fight for those who could not. The first Zorath ships appeared on their sensors, their black, angular forms cutting through the stars like predators. They were large, brutish ships, designed for sheer firepower, but they weren't prepared for what was coming. "Target locked," Volkov's voice rang out. "Weapons hot." Vos nodded once, her lips curling into a grim smile. "For the defenseless. Fire." The Resolute Dawn unleashed its first salvo, turrets and railguns firing in unison, the sound of its weapons filling the space between stars. The Zorath fleet, taken off guard, faltered for a brief moment. That was all humanity needed. The Resolute Dawn tore through space, its engines roaring as it surged toward the Sirith cluster. Ahead, a convoy of civilian ships, fragile and unarmed, darted between asteroid fields in a desperate attempt to escape the encroaching Zorath fleet. The refugees, some human, some not, were fleeing their homes, their families scattered by the Dominion's brutal advance. Captain Alina Vos felt the weight of the situation press down on her chest. She had been trained for combat, for war, but nothing prepared her for this. Innocent lives hanging in the balance, fleeing for their very survival. "Time to intercept. 10 minutes, said Lieutenant Zara Juno, her voice calm, but the urgency in her eyes was unmistakable. "Zorath ships are on the edge of the cluster. We'll have to engage before they close the gap." "We'll do it, Zora," Vos said, her voice firm, but tinged with a rare moment of vulnerability. "We can't let them wipe out these people. This ends now." The tension on the bridge was palpable as every crew member adjusted their stations, preparing for the inevitable. Across the crew, eyes flickered to the large view screen as the Zorath ships came into view, dark, imposing, and brimming with weapons. "Target locks acquired," Commander Thomas Volkov reported. "They're closing in on the convoy. We can't let them reach them." A flash of motion caught Vos' attention. The Zorath fleet was making its move. Their weapons flared to life, massive bolts of energy arcing toward the convoy's fragile hulls. The human fleet, though smaller in number, would have to act fast. "Ready the horizon cannons," Vos commanded. Full power. Get us in range. The Resolute Dawn plunged into action, its advanced systems cutting through space at an incredible velocity. In moments, they were among the Zorath fleet. The first volley of fire from the Dominion ships crackled in the void, missing by mere meters, but humanity's response was swift. The Horizon cannons fired, unleashing a barrage of precision-targeted energy blasts, each one punching through the Zorath warship's shields like paper. Direct hit. Zorath battleship. Decommissioned, reported Lieutenant Juno, her voice sharp with a mix of relief and adrenaline. Enemy ships are retreating. But it wasn't over. A second wave of Zorath reinforcements appeared out of the shadows of nearby asteroids, their numbers overwhelming. The first wave had been a mere diversion. "We're not done yet," Voss snapped. "All hands, brace for another assault. We're not backing down." The crew surged into action. The Resolute Dawn swiveled, dodging incoming fire, launching decoys and countermeasures as the Zorath poured everything they had into the human ship. Then, in the midst of the chaos, something unexpected happened. A ship, smaller, faster, more agile, appeared. It was a refugee vessel, piloted by one of the civilians fleeing the Zorath. The ship, a civilian freighter, wasn't built for combat, but it darted between the Zorath forces, drawing fire away from the Resolute Dawn. Voss watched, wide-eyed, as the freighter made a desperate, calculated maneuver to shield a group of smaller civilian vessels. "They're fighting back," she murmured. "Just like us." "Captain," Volkov said, pulling her focus back to the tactical display. "We need to finish this. Now." With a sudden roar of engines, the Resolute Dawn leaped forward, delivering the final crushing blow to the Zorath reinforcements. The Dominion ships crumpled under the might of humanity's newest flagship, retreating into the shadows. The battlefield fell eerily silent. The convoy had been saved, but the cost of their victory was clear. The Resolute Dawn had taken heavy damage, and the crew knew that this was just the beginning of a much larger war. "We did it," Voss said, breathing heavily, her hand resting on the arm of her chair. "But they'll come again." "Then we'll be ready," Volkov said, his voice unwavering. The message was clear. Humanity had chosen its side, and they would not be cowed. The Resolute Dawn limped through the void, its hull bearing the scars of battle. The crew, though fatigued, was driven by the knowledge that they had made a difference. But Captain Alina Voss knew that the Zorath would not relent. They had only scratched the surface of the Dominion's brutality. As they journeyed deeper into the heart of Zorath-controlled space, a new mission arose, one that would change everything. "Captain," Lieutenant Zora Juno called from the communications deck, her tone serious. "We've intercepted an encrypted transmission from a remote world in the Aldrin Expanse. It's not a distress call, but there's something odd about it. It seems like a warning." A shiver ran down Voss's spine. "A warning? Who would send a warning in the middle of a war?" "Patch it through," Voss ordered, her voice calm despite the unease gnawing at her. The signal appeared on the main screen, a scrambled mess of static and broken words. But then, amid the distortion, a voice broke through, weak, frantic, but unmistakably human. "Worlds. Cathari. Eclipse engine. Don't let them find it." The transmission cut off abruptly. "Did you catch that?" Voss asked, her eyes narrowing. "The Cathari and the Eclipse engine." Juno looked at the screen, her brow furrowed. "Yes, Captain." That was no ordinary message. And those names, Cathari, the Eclipse engine, I've never heard of them. But if the Zorath are involved, it can't be good. Voss leaned forward. "We're heading to the Aldrin Expanse. We'll find that world and uncover what the Zorath are after. Everyone else is too afraid to get involved, but we won't sit idle while the universe burns." As the Resolute Dawn changed course, the crew prepared for what would be their most dangerous mission yet. The Aldrin Expanse was a desolate region, isolated by harsh space phenomena and ancient cosmic storms. No one willingly ventured there. But if the Zorath were searching for something as powerful as the Eclipse engine, they had no choice but to press on. Days passed, each one heavier than the last. The ship's sensors detected unusual energy readings as they entered the region, and it wasn't long before they found the source. A barren planet, barely visible through the shifting electromagnetic fields that surrounded it. The moment they entered the planet's orbit, the Resolute Dawn was hailed by an ancient automated signal. Unauthorized entry detected. Proceed to quarantine zone. Quarantine zone, Commander Thomas Volkov muttered, staring at the readings. That's not a standard protocol for any system. This planet, whatever it was, has secrets. Voz looked at her crew, each one knowing what this meant. They were about to unlock something the galaxy had forgotten. Something that had been buried for a reason. We're going in, Voz said, her voice resolute. Prepare for landing. The Resolute Dawn descended through the planet's thin atmosphere, its massive engines humming with restrained power. Below them, the landscape was a twisted maze of ancient ruins, once a thriving civilization now lost to time and war. The planet, known only as Viridian 9, seemed to be both alive and dead, its scarred surface a testament to forgotten battles. Captain Alina Voz stared out at the decaying cityscape. The Zorath have been here. No question. How do you figure? Commander Thomas Volkov asked, standing beside her. This place looks like it's been abandoned for millennia. Because the Zorath don't destroy. They collect, Voz replied grimly. Whatever the Eclipse engine is, it's here, and they've left no stone unturned in their search for it. The crew gathered their gear and prepared to land near a large complex buried beneath the crumbled ruins. The ancient structure stood at the edge of a great chasm, its metallic exterior still gleaming faintly beneath layers of dust. But there was a feeling in the air, heavy, oppressive, that sent a chill down Voz's spine. Captain, Lieutenant Zora Juno called out from her station. Sensors are picking up traces of Zorath energy signatures. They're here. Voz tightened her jaw. We need to move fast. We're not the only ones hunting this thing. As the landing ramp lowered, the crew stepped onto the cracked surface of the planet. The ground beneath their boots seemed to tremble with a long-held secret, a reminder of the ancient power buried deep within the planet's depths. The team moved in silence, weapons ready, as they navigated the winding corridors of the ancient complex. The walls were lined with strange, alien symbols, language long forgotten by the galaxy, but one Voz recognized from the legends, the Kethari. They were the caretakers of something powerful, Juno murmured, her flashlight illuminating the carvings. But why would the Zorath be interested in their technology? Voz didn't have the answer. All she knew was that if the Zorath got their hands on whatever was hidden here, the consequences would be catastrophic. Suddenly, the ground beneath them rumbled. A deep, resonating sound echoed through the complex. A door, massive and intricately designed, began to rise, revealing a large chamber beyond. In the center, glowing faintly in the dim light, was a device. It was unlike anything Voz had ever seen, an alien construct of dark metal and pulsating energy. It radiated an aura of quiet menace. Before they could approach, a blinding flash of light filled the chamber, and the crew froze. The Zorath had arrived. A voice boomed from the darkness beyond the door. The Zorath were here, and they would stop at nothing to take what was rightfully theirs. Humans, you should not have come. Voz's pulse quickened, but her resolve hardened. We're not leaving without that device. The battle for the Eclipse engine was about to begin. The Resolute Dawn had barely come to a halt when the sound of Zorath boots echoed through the halls of the ancient complex. Captain Alina Voz and her crew took up defensive positions, the air thick with tension. The Zorath were closing in, their dark, hulking forms appearing from the shadows, weapons drawn and eyes glinting with cold fury. We're outnumbered, Commander Thomas Volkov muttered, his voice tight as he scanned the growing force of Zorath soldiers assembling in the chamber. But we have the advantage of surprise. For now. Voz glanced at him, her expression unwavering. Surprise won't win this fight. We need to outthink them, not just outgun them. Her hand hovered over the activation switch of her personal sidearm, but she hesitated. They couldn't afford a direct confrontation. Not yet. The Eclipse engine pulsed behind them, casting a dim, ominous light over the room. They needed to find a way to keep the Zorath distracted while they got to it. Then the ground shook again, and a powerful new presence entered the chamber. Va's eyes narrowed as she saw the massive figure stepping forward, flanked by elite Zorath warriors. It was General Cathor, one of the Zorath's most feared military leaders. His face, adorned with battle scars, twisted into a cruel smile. "So the humans are here," General Cathor rumbled. "How predictable. You came for the power of the Ketheri, just as we did. But your interference is annoying. You can take your power and choke on it," Va said, her voice cold as steel. "We're taking the engine." Cathor chuckled darkly, his laughter echoing in the chamber. "I admire your courage, but it will be your undoing. The engine will be ours. There is no force in the galaxy that can stop us now." Before Vos could retort, a voice called out from the doorway. A figure stepped into view, and Vos's heart skipped a beat. It was Admiral Celine Tur, a former enemy of humanity and leader of the Orvok Collective. A fierce and calculating species, the Orvoks were known for their strategic brilliance, but also their ruthlessness. "General Cathor, you may have the firepower," Admiral Tyre said, her voice calm but filled with authority. "But I have something better." She glanced at Vos with a calculating look. "An offer. Humanity can join the Orvok Collective. We've seen what you can do. Together, we could wield this power and reshape the galaxy. You could be our allies, our equals." The room fell into a tense silence. Vos' crew exchanged uneasy glances. The Orvoks were not a species known for alliances. They were manipulators, cunning, and untrustworthy. "You want us to join you." Vos' voice was sharp, incredulous. "And betray everything we stand for." Tyre didn't flinch. "Not betray. Join. The Zorath are a plague. Together, we can overthrow them. We don't need to fight each other. We can be something more." Vos' mind raced. The decision wasn't an easy one. The Orvoks had strength, intelligence, and an unrelenting thirst for power. But could humanity trust them? Could they afford to play in the same game with such ruthless players? "I'll never sell out the people we swore to protect," Vos finally said. Her voice was resolute. "We'll stop the Zorath on our own terms." Admiral Tyre's smile faded, but the tension in her eyes only deepened. "So be it. But remember, humans, sometimes alliances are necessary to survive." With a sharp motion, Admiral Tyre turned and retreated into the shadows, leaving Vos to face General Cathor alone. "Time to choose your fate, Captain," Cathor sneered. "You're outmatched." Before Vos could respond, the Zorath closed in, weapons raised. The battle was about to ignite, and the stakes had never been higher. The air crackled with tension as General Cathor and his Zorath soldiers advanced, the darkness of the chamber making their forms appear even more menacing. The Eclipse engine glowed faintly behind them, a silent witness to the growing conflict. Captain Elena Vos stood her ground, the weight of the situation pressing down on her. They were outnumbered, with the Zorath's elite forces in front of them, and Admiral Celine Tur retreating into the shadows. But Vos had never been one to back down from a fight, especially not when innocent lives were on the line. "We won't let you take it," she said coldly, her hand gripping the hilt of her sidearm, eyes locked onto General Cathor. "The Eclipse engine stays with us." Cathor's lips twisted into a smirk. "You think your resolve will save you, human. The engine is beyond your comprehension. You're nothing but a fleeting spark in the darkness. The Zorath are eternal." Va's team moved into position, weapons drawn, as the tension heightened. The Zorath were advancing slowly, giving her crew a few precious seconds to act. They couldn't win in a head-on confrontation, but they didn't have to. They had a plan, one that relied on ingenuity, not strength. "Now," Voss barked. The crew sprang into action, Lieutenant Zora Juno deploying a series of blinding flash grenades that exploded in rapid succession, momentarily disorienting the Zorath. Volkov and the rest of the team fired on instinct, their weapons buzzing with energy as they created a wall of fire to buy themselves time. Voss sprinted toward the central control panel of the Eclipse engine, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew there were no guarantees, but the engine was their only hope. She had to try to gain control over it. The Zorath might have the firepower, but humanity had something they didn't: resourcefulness and a willingness to fight for the things that mattered. "Cover her," Volkov shouted as he and the rest of the crew created a perimeter around her. The Zorath soldiers recovered quickly, but the human team kept them at bay with precise fire. Voss reached the panel, and despite the chaos, worked quickly to decipher the alien interface. Her fingers flew over the controls, accessing the code hidden within the Ketheri technology. There were no guides, no instructions, just raw, uncharted alien data that had been sealed for millennia. Her mind raced, calculating, interpreting symbols and patterns she could barely comprehend. Behind her, Cathor snarled, "You think you can control the engine? It will consume you." With a sharp hiss, the engine's dormant power surged to life. The chamber filled with a brilliant, blinding light, and for a moment, the Zorath hesitated, fear flickering in their eyes. The device hummed with an otherworldly energy, as if recognizing humanity's presence. Voss gritted her teeth, her vision swimming with the overwhelming power of the engine. "It's working." The tide was about to turn, but at what cost? The Zorath, realizing the danger, charged. They could not allow the engine to be controlled by anyone but them. "Fall back," Voss ordered. "Get to the exit." Her crew pushed forward with everything they had, but they were outnumbered and the Zorath were closing in fast. Voss had triggered something powerful, but it wasn't enough to stop the enemy from pressing forward. "No," Cathor roared, raising his weapon as the chamber trembled under the engine's energy. With a final, desperate push, Voss and her team retreated toward the exit, the Zorath hot on their heels. But the battle was far from over. The fight for the Eclipse engine had only just begun. The resolute Dawn loomed in the distance, its silhouette barely visible through the swirling dust clouds that had enveloped the planet. Captain Elena Voss and her crew ran through the corridors of the ancient complex, the sounds of Zorath footfalls growing louder behind them. Their retreat was chaotic, frantic. Humanity's last stand was unfolding in real time, with every second ticking away like a countdown to destruction. "Move, move, move," Voss barked, her voice hoarse with urgency. Commander Thomas Volkov and Lieutenant Zora Juno led the way, pushing through the narrow passageways, their weapons raised and ready to fire. Behind them, Sergeant Mei Lin and Ensign Jarek struggled to keep the rear secure, taking out the occasional Zorath soldier who dared to follow them. "Captain, we've got incoming." Zorath troops blocking the south entrance, Lin reported, her breath quick and shallow as she adjusted her rifle's aim. "They're closing in on us." The situation was rapidly deteriorating. They needed to make it to the resolute Dawn, but the Zorath weren't just content to chase them down. They were laying siege to the ruins, preparing to bombard the landing zone. The Eclipse engine had been activated, but with the power of the Ketheri technology at their fingertips, the Zorath were desperate to control it. And they wouldn't let a few humans stand in their way. "We have no time," Voss said, her eyes scanning the path ahead. "We need to get to the Ark Caverns. Now." The Ark Caverns were a hidden network of tunnels beneath the planet, ancient evacuation routes once used by the Ketheri. If they could reach them, they might have a chance at escaping and regrouping. The caverns led directly to a launch pad located beneath the ruins, an old, forgotten access point that had remained untouched for centuries. As they sprinted through the dark corridors, a sudden explosion rocked the ground beneath them. The building groaned, its ancient structure beginning to buckle under the strain. "That's it. They're starting the bombardment," Volkov shouted, his voice rising over the sounds of the crumbling walls. "We're almost there," Juno urged, her voice taut with anticipation. "Just a few more steps." They turned a sharp corner, only to find themselves face to face with the Zorath platoon. The soldiers were already in formation, weapons aimed, and ready to fire. For a moment, there was nothing but the deafening sound of their breaths, the heartbeats of humanity's last defenders. "No more running." Cathor's voice echoed from the shadows, his looming figure stepping into the corridor, his weapon crackling with energy. "You think you can escape with the Eclipse engine? You think you can stand against us?" Va's eyes narrowed. This was it. She had no intention of running anymore, not from Cathor, and not from the Zorath. "No, General. This ends now." Without another word, she threw a grenade toward the Zorath troops, a flash of blinding light followed by an explosion that sent them scrambling for cover. The blast created enough chaos for the crew to break through the line. They didn't stop to look back. Every footfall was a step closer to the Ark caverns, and they had no time to lose. Behind them, the ground trembled again as the Zorath forces closed in, but Elena Vos was unwavering. The battle for the Eclipse engine had reached a boiling point, and humanity was prepared to fight until the last breath. The Resolute Dawn was in sight now, its gleaming hull a beacon of humanity's defiance against the overwhelming darkness of the Zorath Dominion. Captain Elena Vos and her crew pushed through the labyrinthine ruins, hearts pounding, lungs burning. They were almost there, but behind them, the Zorath were relentless, their bombardment shaking the ground and creating chaos that threatened to swallow them whole. "Keep moving," Vos shouted, her voice strained but full of determination. "We don't stop until we're on that ship." Commander Tomas Volkov and Lieutenant Zora Juno flanked her, weapons raised, scanning the corridors for any sign of the enemy. The air was thick with dust, the ruins vibrating with the force of the Zorath's heavy artillery. The distant rumble of their cannons was a constant reminder of how close they were to losing everything. The Ark caverns loomed ahead, an ancient entrance hidden beneath layers of stone and dust. It had once been a secret passage used by the Cathari, but now it was humanity's only hope for escape. The caverns were their final chance to break through the Zorath blockade and return to the safety of the Resolute Dawn. But the Zorath had caught up faster than expected. General Cathor's voice echoed down the corridors, amplified by the comms, laced with fury. "No more retreating, humans. Your escape ends here." Va's grip tightened on her sidearm. They were running out of time. If they didn't reach the caverns in the next few minutes, they'd be trapped, their only ship under siege by a relentless enemy. A blast of energy shattered the wall beside them, sending debris flying in every direction. Sergeant Mei Lin was knocked off her feet, but Ensign Jarek reached her just in time, helping her up. "Keep moving," Juno barked, pulling them forward. "We can't afford to stop now." They rounded the final corner to the entrance of the Ark caverns, where the Resolute Dawn was waiting. The ship was battered, but alive. Lieutenant Commander Jonah Thorne, the ship's second-in-command, stood at the entrance, his expression grim but hopeful. "Captain, we're ready to launch. But we got incoming Zorath ships above us," Thorne reported, his hand steady as he monitored the ship's systems. "It's now or never." The team made a final sprint toward the ship, the Zorath closing in, but the Resolute Dawn's engines roared to life just as the crew boarded. Vos could feel the ship lurch as it lifted off the ground, the power of their engines cutting through the chaos below. The ground shook one last time as the Zorath fired on their position, but the Resolute Dawn was already cutting through the atmosphere, rising into the sky. "We made it," Volkov said, his voice low but filled with relief. Vos gazed out at the distant planet, the ruins of Viridian 9 shrinking below them. The battle for the Eclipse engine was far from over. The Zorath would pursue them. Admiral Celine Ter and her Orvok collective would find new ways to manipulate events. But today, Humanity had won a crucial victory. "We've only begun," Voss said, her voice unwavering. "The galaxy needs us, and we will fight, no matter the odds." As the stars stretched before them, the crew of the Resolute Dawn knew they were not just survivors of a war. They were the spark of a new resistance, a force that would stand against the darkness that threatened the universe. The dawn of humanity's fight for the galaxy had just begun.